What's up, guys? So this is going to be the very first tutorial for our Breakout series using Python. In order to get started, we're just going to have to import some of the resources. So down in the description box, I'm going to have these three WAV files and then just a random picture for a background. I just chose stars. I'm just going to import them into the project. Just paste them on in there. And then as for getting started, so we're obviously going to have to import Python, because that's not import Python, import Pygame, because that's what everything's going to be running on. And then just initialize that. We're going to set the screen width. I'll set it to 800 and the height at 800 as well, and then just create a window for the actual game. So win equals pygame dot display dot set underscore mode, and then screen width, screen height. And then we can just set like a title for it. So pygame dot display dot set caption, and we'll just call it Breakout. So for this game, we're going to need a clock, and the clock is just going to kind of keep the frame rate the same on every single device, because some computers are better than others. So clock equals pygame dot tick dot clock. Alright. And then what we are going to make is these are just kind of like the basics for every Pygame game that you create. So we're going to create a while loop that's actually going to be running, keeping the game consistent. So let's just create like a boolean of like run equals true, and then say while run. We're going to do clock dot tick 100, and the 100 here is what determines how many frames a second the game is going to be running at. So the higher the value, the more frames, and the lower the value, the slower it's going to be going. So I think 100 is going to be good for this game. And then we're going to create a for loop. So for event in pygame dot event dot get. We're going to say if event dot type equals pygame dot quit run equals false. And so what that's going to do is whenever we exit out of the application after we run it, it's just going to terminate the program. And then at the very, very bottom, we'll just add a pygame dot quit, so that whenever the while loop ends, the whole code's going to stop running. And yeah, what we can also just kind of implement right now, like I said, all this is just kind of like the outline for what we're going to be using later on. We can add a function called redraw game window. So def redraw game window, and we're going to be calling pygame dot display dot update, and then we can just kind of call that right here, redraw game window. And so now when we run it, we should obviously get an error, because that's how life goes. And that is my bad. This needs to be time, not tick. Right there, time, run that. And so now we just get a blank screen. So if you want, you can leave it as a black background. I'm going to add a background. I'll just add that right up here. So what I'm going to do is create like a background. So we'll just say bg equals, and then we're going to import that image, this one right here, the stars background. So bg equals pygame dot image dot load stars bg dot png, and then initialize it right here in the redraw function. So we'll say win dot blitz and then BG, which is the background image, at the point 0, 0. So now when we run it, we will see the background that we just created. So that is looking good so far. Next up, what we should work on is creating the classes for the 3 objects that we need. So we're going to need a ball class, we're going to need a paddle class, and a brick class. And so I guess the first thing we can work on is the paddle. So let's say class paddle, it's going to be an object. And let's create the init function for it. So we'll say, and then in this we're going to add a couple of parameters. So we'll add the x and the y positioning of it. We'll add the width and the height that we want the ball to be, and then the color. And then, you know, the basics, just self.x equals x, self.y equals, self.y equals y, self.width equals width, self.height equals height, and then self.color equals color. Fantastic. And then let's go ahead and create a draw function that we're going to be calling inside of the redraw function that we created a little while ago. So we're going to say def draw, and then we're going to add window in here. And then what we're going to say is pygame dot draw dot rect, and it's going to say window comma window comma, and then self dot color. Then we're going to add a list of 4 values. The first value is going to be the x, the second value is going to be the y, the third value is going to be the width, and the fourth one is the height. So that's what's going to draw the paddle on the board, or on the screen. So this is all we really need for the paddle so far. So down here, before the while loop, if we want to just kind of see what we made, we can go and we can create a paddle. So we can just say like player equals paddle, and what we'll need to give it is a value for the x and the y. So we can say like, we say like 400, 400, and then for the width and the height, let's say 120, and then the color we can set it to, let's just say, let's say we want it to be white, so 255, 255, 255. Looking good. Let's up, and then up here in the redraw function, what we need to do is call player dot draw and pass in window. And so now we should be seeing the paddle right there. That is our little paddle. We'll move that around and mess with it. That's just kind of how to actually get that to display. So we can comment, well, we can just leave that there for now. Next, let's go and make the class for the ball. So we'll say class ball, it's another object, and we'll create the init function for that. This is also going to need an x and a y, a width, a height, and a color. And then it's going to need these same values right there. And then for the ball, since the ball is going to be moving and we're not really going to be controlling its movement, we're going to have to also create some velocities for it. So we're going to say self.x velocity equals, and we'll set it to 0, and then self.y velocity is going to equal, we'll set it to 5. And then that should be good for now. We can kind of mess with that in a little bit, and then we'll also create a draw function in here. So def draw, pass in window, and it's going to be pygame dot draw dot rect window self dot color, and honestly it's this same code that we used up there, so we'll just copy that list. Self.x, y, width, and the height. And then what this is also going to need is another function just called move, so def move, and it's going to be just, we're basically So for every single frame, we're going to be adding the velocity to the position of the x, and that's what's going to cause it to move. So when we say self.x plus equals self.xv, it's going to be moving the x position depending on what the velocity of x is, and then self.y plus equals self.yv. That's looking good. Let's go down here and create a ball as well. So we'll say ball equals ball, and then we'll give it an x value of, let's say 0, and then the screen height, or for the y, we can just say the screen height minus, let's say 150, so that's going to put it 150 pixels above the bottom of the screen. Then we'll go 20 and 20 for the width and the height. And as for the color, we can just make that white as well, so 255, 255, 255. And then we'll do the same thing. Go up to the redraw game window, ball.draw. In the windows, make sure it's all kind of showing up, so it's actually right there because the x value is 0, but right now we're not really focused on the actual positioning. We're just gonna make all the objects and then kind of organize it in a little bit. I guess we can move it down. Let's move the paddle down. So right now it's at 400. Let's say the paddle is going to be 100 pixels from the bottom, and so we have sh, which is 800 for the height. Do that minus 100, and then if we want to make it centered, we can just do screen width minus, since we're setting the width to 100, we'll do the screen width minus, or divided by 2, so that's going to give us the center of the screen. That'll be 400, and then minus 50, so that it'll be in the center. So let's just make sure that's looking good. So that looks like it's in the middle. And then as for the ball, we'll kind of have it in the same position, just a little bit higher. So we'll say for the x, screen width divided by 2, and then minus 10. And then let's just move it up a little higher. So like, let's say 200. And so now, that's not too bad, right? What should we work on next? Let's make a class for the actual bricks that we're going to be breaking. So let's say class brick. It's another object. Okay, def init. And then as for the parameters that we're going to need right here, it's going to be the same one as earlier. So just x, y, width, height, color. And then we can just, same deal, copy these, paste them in there. And then what we're also going to need for these is self.visible. So what self.visible is going to do is it's going to check to see if that brick's been hit. So whenever the ball hits a brick, we're going to set visible to false, which is going to then cause it to be like taken off the screen. So visible equals true by default because they're all going to show up at first until they get hit. And then what we're going to need, so what I like to kind of create sometimes is these variables called like self.xx and self.yy, because lots of times whenever you're checking for collisions, you're going to have to check the beginning x position and then also check the ending x position. Same for y, top and bottom. So what this is going to be, it's just going to be self.x plus self.width. It kind of just saves a little bit of typing later on, so we'll just kind of add those right now. Self.y plus self.height. And then what we should do is create the drawing function. So def draw, and then win. And we're just going to draw a rectangle for this as well. So let's say Pygame dot draw dot rect window self.color, and then an array self.x, self.y, self.width, and then self.height. Perfect. And then, so what we need for all the bricks is, since we have multiple of them, we're going to create a list of all the bricks. and then run through a for loop that initializes them when the game starts. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually just go ahead and create a function down here. Let's go right here. And we're going to create a function called init. And this is what's going to actually initialize all of our pieces. So let's go ahead and create a list for the bricks. We'll just make that an empty list. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a for loop. So for, let's say I in range. And then the way I'm going to lay it out is going to have, I think we're going to go with 6 rows of 10 columns. So we'll have 60 bricks. That should look good. So 6. And then we'll create another for loop for j in range 10. And what we're going to do in here is we're going to actually just append a brick. So bricks.append. And this is where things kind of get a little bit long, right? So bricks.append a new brick where the x is going to be 10 plus j times 79. And the y is going to be 50 plus j times 35. So the reason it kind of looks like this, oh, whoops, this should be an I. Okay, so the reason this looks like this is that for the x value, we're going to be separating them by 79 pixels. And what that's going to do is kind of space out the bricks. So since we're running through the list, we're running through the for loop, we're multiplying it by the value that we're on. So at first it's going to be 0. The first one's going to have an x value of 10. The second one's going to be 1. So it'll be 10 plus 79 times 1, which is 89. The third one is going to be a value of j for 2. So 2 times 79 is 158 plus 10, 168. And it's just going to kind of increment it like that. And the same goes for the y. As for the widths and the heights, I mean, they're all going to be the same width and the height. So the width should be 70 for each. Since we're separating it by 79, that'll give them a little bit of space in between. And then the heights, we can set it to 25. And then as for the color, I'm going to go with it's going to be like a light blue. So like 120, 205, 250. And yeah. And then we just need, let me see. Oh, we just need to get rid of that parentheses and throw at the very end. So that should create all the bricks. And then since we have a list of all these bricks, inside of the redraw game window, we need to go for b in bricks. We're going to call the drawing function. Okay, so let's actually go outside this init function and create bricks out here. We'll say bricks equals this, and then in the beginning say global bricks. So this way we can actually, whenever we call global bricks right here, it's going to be telling Python that we're trying to edit this variable out here. And then since it's on the outside of the function, we can actually access it inside other functions. So for b in bricks, so now whenever we call it, there's already going to be 20, or not 20, just all the bricks that we create from this for loop. And we're going to call the drawing function for each of them. So b.draw, and then just pass in the window. That should draw them. We just got to make sure that at some point we call init. So let's see where we should call that. So we can just call that right here for now. We'll just say init. And that should create some bricks. Let's check it out. Perfect. So now we've got the ball right there, the paddle on the bottom, and now we have 6 rows of 10 bricks running across the top. They're all evenly spaced. It's starting to kind of come together.